Beltane, Bealtaine, Bealtaine, however you pronounce it, this is a very auspicious time for the vegan witch. Stick with me and I'll explain. Welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Corey Wren. I'm a vegan sociologist, I'm a vegan feminist, and a vegan witch. And this is part of my ongoing series of veganizing the Sabbats. So if you don't know anything about Sabbats, basically they are pagan, nature-based ways to celebrate the turning of the solar cycle. So turning of the seasons. And I pronounce it Bealtaine because that is the way closest that I can do as an American anyway. That's the way that it's pronounced in Gaelic Irish, and Bealtaine simply means the month of May in Irish. So very fitting then when we're talking about May 1st, Bealtaine. But I think the anglicized version, you're more likely to hear it pronounced as Beltane. So where is the origin of the word? Kind of like Lunasa is based off the Celtic god Lu, the sun god. When we're looking at Bealtaine, Beal is an old Celtic god, and then Tanya or Tinya is the Irish word for fire. So hence, this is one of those big fire Sabbats, and it is traditionally a time for big old bonfires. So the four major Sabbats of the year, Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lunasa, and Samhain, these are all part of the Celtic tradition. They all are major fire Sabbats. So Imbolc, that is a time for the candle fire, candle flame, the internal fire. Bealtaine is the bonfire time. And then when you're looking at Lunasa, that's the solar fire, the sun fire. It's when the sun is at its hottest and the brightest here in the northern hemisphere. And then Samhain is the hearth fire, for obvious reasons. So Bealtaine historically has been a time for making big fires, and in agricultural Ireland, and really in the British Isles more generally, this would also be a time to cleanse the home, cleanse your livestock. So unfortunately, this is where the vegan feminist critique comes in. A lot of these old traditions, or old Sabbath traditions rather, are focused on more recent human history, which is centering animal agriculture. So definitely when Irish people came to settle what is now Ireland, they brought with them domesticated animals. So by the way, these people predate the Celts. So animal agriculture has always been part of the Irish legacy. And so you see that, for instance, on May Day, the cows might be walked through big fires and basically smoked out. And this was to keep the fairies and the witches away. Probably what was happening, it was a way to fumigate, to remove pests and vermin from people's livestock. Now, just because this is a day that is centered around livestock purification and taking account of your livestock, that doesn't mean that this can't be a vegan time for celebration. So, first and foremost, there are quite a lot of traditions around May Day that are not pleasant. They may involve animal sacrifice. I believe that some parts of Ireland, for instance, it was a time to sacrifice a chicken or a rooster, and then you could sprinkle the blood around your home, and that would bring protection. But that said, this is also a time where you don't really see a lot of animal sacrifice when it comes to food, because this is still a time when a lot of the planting has not really come to fruition yet. This is not really a major time for killing animals for their flesh. This is more of a time for maybe making butter or other dairy products. But even that's not really associated with Bealtaine. This is more of a celebration of the returning of the greenery. This is a return of the promise of summer. And this is a time for foraging and celebrating wild green things. And so in this way, actually, Bealtaine is quite veganizable. And I think that we might position ourselves as maybe on the other side of the celebration, as far as when the farmers then and today might be using this time to protect their cattle from ne'er-do-wells. Because traditionally in Ireland, May Day, and this held true until very recently, like I used to date a guy from Ireland, and his grandmother and his aunt even, they would not go out on May 1st because they really believed that fairies were out there and they were going to get them. And fairies in Ireland are not nice fairies. These are malevolent spirits or malevolent beings. So this is one of the reasons why that the livestock would be put through the purification fires, the smoking of the fires, in order to not just rid them of the evil eye or whatever you want to call it, but to protect them from fairies, because the fairies were truly thought to run amok on May 1st. So this is where I might position the vegan witch. We don't want to purify away from those spirits that might get in the way of livestock, because we can be those spirits, right? That's ultimately our aim. We aim to disrupt speciesism, we aim to disrupt animal agriculture, and we aim to liberate the cows and other animals. So we might rework then Bealtaine in two ways. First off, we're positioning ourselves as those witches and fairies that are interfering with animal agriculture and celebrating that as a good thing. So we're kind of flipping the script. And number two, we're also refocusing attention to celebrating the wild green of nature and the returning of green growth. So this is also a time that is associated with the Green Man, which is a very ancient pagan deity, if you will, or symbol, archetypal character that represents the verdant nature. So we might then, as vegans, focus and celebrate on the returning of the greenery, and this celebrates our relationship with fellow animals and with nature more broadly. And I think the Green Man archetype is actually quite interesting, because it illustrates a sort of blurring of boundaries. This is not just a human, but also nature, and it harkens back on a time when those boundaries between nature and humans, between humans and other animals, between civilized and wild, these boundaries were not quite set yet. So the fact that the Green Man actually persists even today is, I think, quite telling and quite powerful. So Bealtaine is practiced still today in everyday life. I know that some parts of the United States, May Day is, I remember as a kid knowing what May Day was. Don't really do a lot, I think, in the United States. I think we may have had maypoles in the past, but certainly in the British Isles, that tradition still remains. Maypoles can still be found. And here where I live in Canterbury, and in nearby Whitstable, they have a Jack in the Green, which is basically a variation of the Green Man. And villages have historically practiced that all across the country. And it's just to celebrate that nature is returning. And the footage I'm showing here was from the 50th anniversary of the Jack in the Green in Whitstable. And it was spitting rain that day and still quite chilly. We're all in our jackets, our winter coats. But nonetheless, we knew that this was the promise of summer and warm weather was on the way. And so it's a really sweet way to kind of touch base with these older connections that human communities used to have with natural processes, the solar cycles, and with nature more broadly. So if you'd like to incorporate Bealtaine into your daily witchy practice, there's lots of things that you can do. One of the things you can do is go and collect some wildflowers and leave them on the stoop to greet the fairies as they're out doing their mischief. So on the eve of Bealtaine, you can put those out on the stoop. You can celebrate this fire Sabbath by baking bread. That's always a great way to do something vegan, plant-based, and celebrate the fiery heat of the Sabbath, because this is a major bonfire festival, right? So baking bread is always a classic. Bealtaine is also a really good time for vegans to get a bit mischievous and interfere intentionally with animal agriculture. We are that fairy, we are that witch that farmers have been trying to scare away for so many thousands of years. We are not here to harm non-human animals, we're here to deliver non-human animals. So I think a really great way to celebrate Bealtaine is to do your own fire cleansing of the livestock, and then that is to rid them of the vermin that is speciesism and people who wish to harm them. But we can actually rework this ancient anti-witch magic and put it towards solidarity with fellow animals, and interpret that as you will. Maybe that means you take part in a protest. Maybe that means you do some online campaigning. Maybe that means you volunteer at a local sanctuary, etc., etc. But the beauty of vegan witchcraft is that not just kind of aligning ourselves with the natural seasons and the changing of the seasons, but also grounding our intentions in real world actions. So that's what I'm hoping to do with Vegan Witchcraft, is to inspire us to, first off, it's really good for self-care. So paying attention to the seasonal changes is really good for us for grounding, but also inspire us to rework old traditions and repurpose them for the greater good, for multi-species thriving. Because ultimately that's what witchcraft does, and ultimately that's what social movement activists do. We're trying to rework traditions and co-create meanings that are beneficial for all, rather than just benefiting the dominant class and reproducing inequality. So very blessed Bealtaine to you. Let me know how you celebrate down in the comments. But let's hijack this. Let's make it vegan again. And in fact, it probably does predate animal agriculture. Maybe not in Ireland, but celebrating this time of year probably does predate the domestication of animals. These are traditions that go way back into the primordial memory of humanity. Let's tap back into that. Tap back into your inner wild man, your inner green person. Keep it witchy.